Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you are. I'll give Amanda a minute to get on here and join me. Ah, there she is, popping on. There we go. Hello, hello. There's Amanda. It says she joined. There she is. Why
Uh,
is my head always so big in this?
well, it's because they have to cut the screen in half. So where do you have how close you are?
My head is taking up the whole thing. That's okay.
Okay.
So hello, good to see you.
Yes, you too. Today we are talking about how to handle diet speak, diet culture talk with our friends and family, especially when we have started to recognize the negative impact that the diet culture has had on us individually. And so we're waking up to it, and we're seeing it all around us, because that is where diet culture is. It's literally ingrained fully into our society.
Yep.
It's in everything. It's in everything, and you can't unsee it. And so you start to make these changes around your own body acceptance, around what you eat, how you look, and they're all generally they're hard changes for a lot, but they're positive changes. But you're still seeing everybody else around you still stuck in the diet culture mentality. That we have. And so you're coming up against things that might trigger you.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, yeah, they absolutely trigger you, but the biggest problem with it is a lot of times, no matter how much work you can kind of try to do to shift yourself out of it, the minute you start spending your time around people that are obsessing about those things again, it's very, very easy to get sucked right back into it and to feel like you have to sort of start that process all over again, so that you're like, back at square one, and I got to try to drag myself back out again because I just spent my afternoon with this one and she was, in it. So yeah, it can be really difficult to continue trying to pull yourself out of it when you're around people who will keep sucking you back into it.
Yeah, and it's triggering. It can suck you back in. It can make you angry.
Mm-hmm.
It can make you feel all these feelings. And so, how do we handle that? What can we do to cope? What can we do to support ourselves? Do we speak up? How do we handle this? And this is something that I think is really important to talk about, because if you do want to unhook from diet culture and you want to recognize that there's a different way to think and feel and be in your body, and have a different relationship with yourself and your body and food and exercise, how can we manage that with diet culture still raging around us? And so I kind of had a little talk about this last week, and I really loved the point you made, is that we are culture. We are the culture, we are the society. So really the first step in changing that is to tell our story, is to share what changes we're making, what we're feeling, what we're doing with others. If we
Yeah.
don't share and tell them hey, I learned this thing, or I'm feeling this thing, and this is what I'm realizing, or this is what I'm doing, or these are the people I'm following, and I'm feeling really good about this. If we don't actually share it with the people around us, then they don't know and they can't make the change. So they're really we need to talk about it. We need to
Yeah.
actually talk about our own journeys and what we're going on, and have the courage to be able to share that with our friends and family.
Yeah. And I think that, so many people complain all of the time about society. We struggle with all of these things because society makes us, and because unrealistic expectations and the media and all of these things. But the reality is that like I said, we are society, and if we're either contributing to it or we're helping to do something about it. and ignoring it is contributing to it. So I feel very, very strongly that if we actually want to change these things, like we have to get to the point where we're willing to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this project in the first place, because the story right now that everybody's telling is that I've been so bad, I've gained weight, I've done this, I've done that, I had to start this diet. Like these are the stories that we're hearing from these people all day, every day. Like, you know, the things that we hear people talk about are the stories that are contributing to creating diet culture and keeping it going and fueling it. And so if we want to change that, and if we're frustrated by the people around us that are still in it and still talking about it, we have to get to the point where, you know, we kind of start stepping up and saying, you know what, I can either continue contributing to it or ignoring it, or I can start working on trying to make it a larger shift, and so that, you know, other people don't go through this, and so that we can actually change the way these conversations happen in real life. And I can start having real conversations with these people around me about what the impact this talk has done to us all. Because I guarantee you that all of those people that are having these conversations and that are stuck in all of this diet talk that drive us so crazy, they're going through the exact same things. They've been affected by it in the exact same ways. So that by bringing it up, by pointing it out, by telling our stories in the ways that we've been impacted by it, we can start shifting the narrative. We can start changing the story, and we can start helping other people to stop talking about it so much, or to start talking about it in a different, more real way. So yeah. I think that's not necessarily always the first step.
No, my best friend is on. I don't know if she's still on. Her name's Amanda too. And she's like, I've always struggled with this forever. And Amanda's my BFF and has been really on this. And she's been really helpful with me. So thank goodness, like, my best friend knows me very well, because I'm very passionate. And when I catch her doing diet culture talk, I kind of like, oh, yeah, she's here. I'm kind of like, here. Love, thank goodness. I can be a little bit intense with her because we have that relationship. Yeah. But we don't have that relationship with everybody. It can feel confrontational. Like, and when do you speak up and when do you not speak up? Yeah. And like you said, like maybe, you know, the first step isn't sharing your story. You need to get to yourself in a place. Yeah. When you're ready to share your story. And so what can people do if they're not ready to share that story yet? What can they do when it's going on around them? You know, yeah. We can ignore it and just not say anything. We don't have to continue to contribute to the conversation.
I think that's the first step, is just stop contributing to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some women around me who are still very much stuck in it, even perfectly know my stance on it, but I think they just don't get it yet. And sometimes I speak up and sometimes I don't. And honestly, I trust my gut, and I look at the context of the conversation. I also kind of sense like, what are their willingness to even hear a different way? Some people, they're just, you can, like, and I know I'm a triggering person sometimes with what I say, and you can, like, when you challenge somebody's identity, and if diet culture has been such a big part of their identity and it's part of their belief system, offer them a different way of thinking, they're going to get defensive, right? And so it's very nuanced.
Yeah, and it absolutely becomes part of our identity, 100%. Like, I often hear clients say, like, I don't even know who I am if I'm not in this struggle. And that in itself can be scary. So absolutely, it becomes part of our identity. And a lot of people just don't want to look at that. And so, you know, whether or not you say something or what you choose to say really depends in large part by where you're at, who you're speaking to, you know, the relationship that you have with that person, the level of awareness and growth that you have within yourself. Because sometimes as you're just starting to, you know, begin to shift out of it, maybe you're not feeling so secure about talking about any of it yet. And so at that stage, you know, maybe just not saying anything or whatever. But you can always, you know, one of the things that I would do in the beginning was just kind of like, and you know, like just kind of, and just kind of, you know, not engage, but like make it be known that it, you know, sort of maybe passive aggressively that this isn't something that because I wasn't ready yet to talk about it, but you know, and I didn't have words to know what to say. So you just kind of like, and when you stop engaging so much and you just kind of, yeah, people get the hint.
They do. Like if you start,
Yeah.
if you stop engaging with them in the talk, they will quickly pick up, oh, when I bring up this topic, this person isn't contributing to the conversation, or maybe some of the things she's saying isn't actually agreeing with me. I wonder why. Maybe I should be curious as to why, or maybe I'll stop.
Yeah.
She says, I feel some people have made this encompass their lives so much they don't even realize it's diet culture anymore. It's their livelihood, which is really sad. It is.
So 1000%. And that, it like literally that was me, because it was my livelihood. Like I was fully entrenched in it. You know, for the years that I was a trainer and working with people in that way, I was fully entrenched in it. And it literally was my livelihood. It was who I was. And I didn't even recognize the ways that I was contributing to it because I was so entrenched in it. So yeah, really great point, Amanda.
It is a process, and we go on that own process as we start to recognize it ourselves and you know, make our own changes around our own beliefs. But you know, when we have mothers and grandmothers of other who haven't done the work, you know, and they're saying stuff about our body, you know, commenting on maybe what we're wearing.
Yeah.
They're thinking, oh, that makes you look bigger. Maybe you shouldn't wear that. But that's diet culture speaking. It's the belief that looking bigger is bad.
Yeah.
And it's still, if you love it and you feel amazing in it, who cares how it makes you look? It's a matter of how you feel in the clothes, right?
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I work with a lot of my clients, is recognizing, are you unsure about this piece because you're afraid of the judgments of others? Or are you unsure about how you feel about this piece? And there is a difference.
Yeah.
You like your body. You need to like how you look. It's about you being comfortable, but being able to separate how you feel versus what are the judgments, you know, what is all these external things, you know, people saying or judging you, and where, you know, what is that boundary between how you feel versus how others feel?
Yeah.
And
How much power are you giving your fear of what they think of you over the way you feel about you?
right.
Yeah.
And you are not responsible for what others think and what others, you're just responsible for yourself. But, you know, there is times that I feel like it is important for us to communicate that boundary. And so particularly hard for people who maybe have wish-washy boundaries because they have, you know, maybe they're people pleasers, or maybe they prioritize other people's opinions over theirs. And so it's really hard for them to practice communicating that boundary. And so it comes with practice, like small steps. But when it comes to how you feel in your body, your own version of what health means to you and happiness, that is a boundary that you need to protect. And if others are coming in under the guise of, I'm concerned, I don't think you should wear this, I think you should eat this, this is bad, I think maybe you've eaten too much, or oh, you've gained weight, or oh, you've lost weight, I'm concerned. And so we need to practice that boundary of like, my body is not up for discussion.
And I think that's sort of a really important point, because it doesn't just happen with friends and family. Like the topic of bodies and what they look like and what they should look like or shouldn't look like, and all of these judgments around bodies and commenting on bodies is, you know, another aspect of diet culture that has been completely normalized in our world. And that needs to stop too. Like it's never appropriate to comment on somebody else's body. And it's really gross that we've gotten to the point where it has become so normalized.
Yeah. And so, you know, I've had people comment on my body because I'm thin. Mm-hmm. So that is very different. I absolutely recognize I have thin privilege. And it is nowhere near in comparison to women who live in larger bodies who have had, you know, lots of horrendous comments made on them. Mm-hmm. But I've had people, close people in my life, be like, you know, I'm really concerned. You're too thin. You need to eat more.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first, when I first lost the weight in 2007, I started hearing people say stuff like that to me too in the beginning. Or not in the beginning, but after I had, lost some weight. You're starting to look sick, you're too thin. And so it's almost like no matter what you do with your body, people think it's okay to comment on it. Like, we're going to comment if it's too big, we're going to comment if it's too small. Like, nothing I ever did with my body made me free from other people feeling like they were allowed to comment on it.
Yeah, and that's that boundary. You just don't comment
Yeah.
on it. And so I had somebody bring their concern to me at a family meal in front of my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I could not stay quiet because I needed my daughter to see that I have a boundary around what they say about me, and that it's not okay. And so I stuck with myself.
And I think that's important too, to remember that our kids are watching and they're learning from us. So if we want them to grow up with these boundaries, we have to teach them by letting them see us do it.
And my mother was over at dinner the other night and she commented about bad food, or she labeled it bad. And I just said very quickly, quietly, I didn't make a big deal of it. And I just, in this house, we don't label food as good or bad. That was it. I said it. We moved on. My mom heard it. She didn't acknowledge it, nothing. And we moved on, and I changed the topic. But that was enough for me to put that boundary up and let her know that in this house, in front of my daughter, we don't label food good or bad. And that's my own struggle, because that's like my diet culture conditioning too, right? Like, I have my own stuff that I'm still working through to make sure that I raise my daughter in a very body positive household, a very food neutral household, and teaching her to listen to her body, those types of things, and trying, it's I'm in my own journey of it, and I need to make sure that I also protect her.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point too, because so often, parents in particular don't even recognize the ways in which they're contributing to some of these destructive and damaging, things around food that pull their kids into diet culture, because they're so focused on trying to help their kids eat right and learn what food is good and what food is bad. And they don't recognize the fact, just doing it just trying to help their kids, learn. But what they're really doing is teaching them to stop trusting their body and start trying to follow these rules about what are good and bad. So I think that's a really important point too.
Right. And it's again, when we do these things, it's not because we want to harm our children.
No, absolutely not. Or anybody else. No, it's just what we've learned and what we've been conditioned.
Yeah, we were told these are the Canadian food groups. This is the good, the bad food. And the thing is, we've assigned morality.
Yeah.
And bad eating.
And so, also told people that you are what you eat. So we tell kids you are what you eat, and that food is bad. So then what happens? And so recognizing the ways in which we're doing that is important. And recognizing the ways in which we're doing it, because we teach the people around us, not even just our kids, but the people around us. Like, we have that opportunity. Like when you had that moment with your mom where you said, you know what, like, we don't use that language with food in our house. That you're showing mom, this is not only my boundary, but this may not necessarily be the best way to think about food. And Amanda says, I feel like a combination of working, mental health, self-awareness, self-confidence, and mental health thriving works together with eliminating diet culture. Yeah, so here's the thing about that. I don't think that you can eliminate diet culture in your life without working on those things. Really great point, Amanda. I don't think that you can work on eliminating it without doing all of those things and doing that work. Absolutely.
Yeah, because diet itself is there to prey on your insecurities.
100%. Yeah. And it destroys your mental health.
Yeah.
So you have to shift those things in order to pull yourself out of diet culture. You have to.
And it's one of the reasons why my clients who come to me who are still, either they have body dysmorphia and they're not treating it, or they have practiced decades of hating themselves and aren't ready to get out of that, and they're not ready to interrupt that loop. and when they come to me looking for help, and yes, you know, I have clients who maybe aren't on the other side yet of, you know, accepting and loving themselves, but they're at the beginning of the journey, and they want to make sure that their clothes and their wardrobe reflects how they're now feeling about themselves, instead of, you know, maybe hiding their body, you know, dressing it in a way to like represent how much they hate themselves. They want to like start to embrace it. And those 100%, the clothing thing can be along your journey, but the women being like, I hate myself and I want you to teach me how to hide my body in clothes. I'm like, I'm not going to do that for you.
Yeah.
I'm not, because if you're not ready yet to break away from that, it doesn't matter what I suggest you put on your body. You're still going to hate it. You're always going to find something. And that is the, you know, I've had some clients where like, at this point, you know, I don't think I can help you. I actually need to go see a counselor.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a great point in terms of weight too, because it's the exact same thing. If you can't find a way to love your body right now as it is, no matter what size it is, there is very little chance you will ever love it anymore when or if you actually are able to make it smaller, because we feel about our bodies the way that we feel about ourselves. Like a mind at war with itself will never find peace with its body. It doesn't matter what size it is. The problem is not the size. The problem is the story that you're telling yourself about the size.
So let's get back to like, how do we
the topic? Yeah, because we got off.
Culture speak around us. You know, it can be just not engaging. It could be sharing your story more openly in front of other people. So change the dialogue, interrupt and change the dialogue, or just inform. Or just informed. You know, maybe the talk isn't happening around you and you are starting off a conversation with, hey, I learned this thing. This is what I'm going through. I think you might think it's awesome too. Like,
yeah. And you know, when people start bringing up the latest diet they're on or something, you know, and this goes back to what you were talking about in terms of dieting. Again, depending on the person, depending on the situation, there's nothing wrong with speaking up and saying, hey, you know what, I've really read a lot about how much disordered eating comes from dieting, and, you know, like, and that really harms people that I care about, and it harmed me in the past, and this is what it's done to me. And so, you know, I really don't want to talk about diets.
Yeah, and I think it's a boundary that you need to decide if you want to protect. And
it again, yeah, depends on who you're talking to, you know, the situation. And I think that because a lot of times when people start that new diet or whatever, they're always trying to get people on board to get them to join with them. And so again, depending on the person, you know, there's also nothing wrong with just saying, you know what, I really don't want to. I'm learning to just trust my body to tell me what it wants and needs, and I'm learning how to, you know, reconnect with my body and just nurture it in a way that feels good for it. And I'm good. Like, thanks, but I'm glad it's working for you, but I'm just not in that place, and I'm doing this.
Thinking of like somebody being a little bit more aggressive or assertive and not understanding that boundary. And if it's just me around, I can handle it. But where my boundary comes up is when it's around my kid. Like,
yeah.
We don't talk about diets in this house. And if my daughter is watching something and they're talking about losing weight, gaining weight, thin, or they're like villainizing fat and, you know, idolizing thin, I will interrupt. I will pause the show and we will have a discussion around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's not bad. This is not an insult, even though you just heard it used as an insult. And so I make sure we have these conversations around her, and it is a boundary. We don't talk about bodies. We don't comment on bodies. The other thing is like what I haven't navigated yet. And I'm not sure how to, is those who like, my daughter is beautiful. And people, they're like, oh, you're so pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, but I understand like it's that older generation that values that. And
it's not even the older generation, because you know what? I've noticed myself doing this with my own daughter and my nieces. And I've really had to purposefully make an effort to stop doing that. And another thing that I've noticed with my nieces doing, because my nieces live far away from me, and so we use Snapchat to like you know, connect every day. They're teenagers, that's what they use. So we snap back and forth, and we're always snapping like goofy pictures and different things like that. And so they'll snap a picture and they'll like circle something and point it out or whatever. And I've noticed myself a couple of times doing a snap, and I'll like circle a wrinkle maybe and go to point at it. And then I'll stop myself and I'll be like, no, don't do that, Roni. So it's really important to recognize the ways that we are, and not even just contributing to diet culture, but contributing to this whole idea around good versus bad in terms of the way that we look and bodies in general. Because I can still catch myself doing it with different things like that.
Absolutely, me too. Yeah. It's so ingrained. I also think what could help you around other people if they're being a little bit more direct on, you know, commenting on your body or your clothes, how you look or your weight, is coming up with some almost like scripts.
Yeah.
To say, you know, things that you can just say over and over and over again, so that you're not having to like think on your feet. And it's something like is not open-ended. It's just like, you know, if somebody says something negative or that's triggering about your body or your weight, I don't think I was going to say, you know, maybe we should, you know, thank you for your opinion, but I'm like, no, we shouldn't even think that. No.
No, thank you.
That's our inner, like, we need to be nice, you know,
make everyone happy
story. But it's just like, that is your opinion. And you know what? I'm really loving myself right now. I'm really happy where I'm at, and I don't need that opinion right now. Like, again, and I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but come up and write down some responses. So if you are around somebody that is particularly, you know, ingrained and doesn't listen to your boundary or doesn't even recognize that they're crossing a boundary, think of some type of script to say to them, and something that just, it shuts down the conversation. It's not like getting into a back and forth. It's just a quick response. This is my boundary. We're not going to talk about that in front of me, or we're not going to have this discussion, and leave it.
I think that also it's a great opportunity, again, depending on the person and the situation and all of that. I think it can also be a good opportunity to start a conversation about how that diet talk has impacted that person in their life. And, you know, share how it's impacted you. You know, when we talk about this is how it makes me feel. How has it made you feel in the past? And recognizing how much competition diet talk fosters. It fosters competition over connection. Because when we're talking about the food that we're eating and the weight that we're losing or the weight that we're gaining, and we're judging people based on these choices and these sizes and all of these things, it really becomes this competition of egos, right? Who's doing better? Well, she ate better than I did, so she must be better. Well, she lost more weight than I did, so it really becomes this competition. And when you're in this competition with this other person and you're always like comparing and judging and having these conversations over who looks better in this and it's just all competition, and there's no connection happening. There's no real human connection happening when this is the conversation that's going on all the time. And I think sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's important to recognize that these are not easy conversations to have.
No, and
that's scary.
Yeah, and I think just being honest about how you're feeling, just say, what you just said to me right now, that really hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
That make me feel good about my body. And you know what? I'm working really hard on feeling good about myself, and what I eat in my body, and what you just said really bothered me.
Yeah.
And I think that's because people don't realize that it's so normalized to say these things. We need to remind them, hey, what you just said was really hurtful.
But I think that it's also important to recognize that sometimes we don't even realize that the things people are saying can be hurtful. So for example, my mother, for my entire life, for as long as I can remember, I've heard her say something like, does this thing make me look fat? Or this outfit makes me look fat, or something. And I've always looked at my mother like the ideal body. And so I never realized my whole life she did this. I never had any idea the way that it was impacting me until probably a couple of years ago. She was up visiting and she asked me to take her picture, and she asked me, should I suck my stomach in? And because I've spent so much time working on awareness and recognizing triggers and stuff, instantly my first thought was, well, I don't know, Mom, should I? Like, if you're worried about being fat in your body, should I be worried about being fat in mine? But my whole life, I never recognized that that's what those words were doing to me. So I think understanding, first of all,
it's so insidious.
yeah. So it's really important to recognize when those things are hurtful, because we don't.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So we have to recognize when it is, and then be willing to say, hey, you know what? That's kind of damaging, and it's sending this message. That's what this is. That's the message. And I think it's also important to realize that, you know, putting up these boundaries can feel scary, and it can feel rude. Because like you said, we're so programmed to believe that we have to be nice and keep everyone happy that we feel like it's rude when we start trying to set boundaries.
Yeah, I was reading a book the other day, and there was a chapter on boundaries, and they said, you know, boundary setting is in itself confrontational.
Yeah.
It is. It can be confrontational because we've been trained to appease or please others versus ourselves, and it can seem confrontational at the time. But the thing is, like, we are not responsible for somebody else's reaction to you implementing your boundaries.
And on top of that, I think it's also, we forget that we teach people how to treat us, for one thing, but also people learn by watching other people. And when the people around us start to see us make these shifts and start to see us setting some boundaries for ourselves, it can empower them to do the same things in their lives. So like, if we've normalized not boundary setting, and we've normalized not talking about what diet culture has done to us, that's what gets normalized. But if we want to normalize the opposite, if we want to normalize setting boundaries, and we want to normalize not getting ourselves stuck in these diet talks, then we have to participate in actively doing those things.
So then, before we end, there's another level to this. We could set our boundaries, mm-hmm. and those people cannot honor those boundaries. And at what point do we need to decide that this person is a toxic person in our life? And we might have to make the decision of distancing ourselves from that person in order to protect ourselves. And I think, to me, that's the ultimate boundary. That's the ultimate thing, is the willingness to let the toxic things in your life go in order to protect yourself. Like, that's part of taking care of yourself. You can't change other people. You're not responsible for what they say or their views or their beliefs. I mean, you can try and have conversations and teach and model and do all these things, but at some point, if they're not going to honor that, or they're not willing to change, and they're continuing to say harmful things in your presence or to you, at some point you might have to distance yourself from that person in your life.
Yeah, that's a really great point too. And that's been the case for me. I have had to distance myself from some people in the past, and I think that's a really personal choice, for sure. But for me, it came down to, is this person listening when I express the way that I feel about something? If no, strike one. And am I feeling better about myself as a result of engaging with this person, or am I feeling worse? Mm-hmm. Is this person lifting me up or constantly dragging me down? And if the latter, that's strike two. And that for me is a deal breaker. And it depends on the person, right? Again, like, so much of this is subjective based on so many different things, but it depends on the person. Sometimes it might just be somebody that you can sort of slowly fade out of your life. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it might be a person that you can't really fade out of your life, but you can start, limiting a little bit of contact with or something, like, but those were my two big things. Are they ignoring me when I express the way that I feel about something? And am I feeling drained and worse when I leave them? Those were my two big things.
So Amanda said, my whole life I grew up with a mom who's a size 4, and so many times she would wear something and say, my gut hangs out over my pants. I have struggled my whole life. I was so active. Yeah, that really goes back to the example that you gave, Roni, about, your mom. And so and you, Ronnie, and you and I have talked about this, like sometimes the people who are the worst on themselves are thin people because they are
Yeah.
so afraid. They're just so afraid of being in a bigger body because they know how badly those people are treated and viewed.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it feels scary. She also said, which was a comment that I absolutely missed. I won't comment on their body during weight loss journey now. I'd say you're working so hard. Yeah, that is such a great point, to Amanda. And it's really important to recognize how hard it is to do that when somebody comes to you so excited about how much weight they've lost. And especially for me, because that's what I helped people do, was lose weight forever. So people are naturally drawn to want to tell me about their weight loss. And it's very difficult to not, because you know that that's what they're craving. That's what they want to hear. You know that. And you feel like an ass if you don't. But I won't. I will say, it's so amazing to see you. Or, how do you feel?
That's what I say too.
Tell me about how you feel.
Yeah.
And if they start telling me that they feel great, I'm so happy that you're feeling wonderful. That's, I'm so happy to see you. It's so great that you feel great. And I just try to detach myself from any talks about appearance. Yeah. Or even the work, because I don't like celebrating work anymore. Because too many of us have also identified our value or our worth with how much work we do.
How much
one of them.
Our own appearance in our own body.
Yeah, how much work we do in general, but also how much work we do, for our fitness journey.
Yeah.
And that can open up a whole nother kettle of fish, or worms, or whatever it's called. What is it? Kettle of
worms, I think.
I don't know, whatever. It opens up a whole new thing. Because then it's almost like you start rewarding, and you don't know how destructive those behaviors are they're engaged in that you might be rewarding. So I don't even like talking about that. I just focus on, how do you feel? And it's so great to see you.
Yeah.
It is so great to see you. I'm so happy to see you. Yeah.
Anybody who's still here, do you have any questions, or do you have any examples of maybe some things that people say around
Can of worms,
and you're sure of how to respond or what to do? Let us know and share that, and see if Ronnie and I can help you problem solve that. If you're rewatching this and you're not live, then just comment. We're going to be posting this video on our feed on Instagram, and just give us the scenario in the comments, or send us a private message, and we will help coach you or support you in some kind of way in how to handle scenarios. And reach out to us. It doesn't mean like we always have all the answers, but like 3 minds better than 1, right? And so help you and support you while you navigate these, a challenging person or a challenging conversation. We would love to do that for you.
Yeah, sometimes even just having the support of somebody saying, yeah, you know what, it's within your rights to stand up for yourself in this situation.
Oh, Amanda said she watched the last 10 minutes with her son. So hi, Chase.
Oh. Hi, Chase.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to my best friend Amanda for joining and being so active, and thank you, Ronnie, for this amazing conversation. And again, share with us any scenarios that you're struggling with, and we'd love to help you.
Yeah. See you next time.
Yes. Bye, everybody. Bye.